morning. Wizard Wells here, North Middle School, Harrisburg. Got to force myself to do this today. I wanted to talk about communicating with parents regarding playing D&D in your classroom. This is coming after the administrative conversation because there is a great chance that if there is a parent who has a problem with what you're doing, you may not hear about it from them. That's very likely. So that's why you have to have a talk with your administrator first, if possible. That video is there. So when you have a parent that has questions, and they will, there's a few things you can do to sort of mitigate this. The first thing is to allow them to understand, okay, so it takes time to set characters up at the beginning of the year. That's usually like the first flag. They're like, well, how long are they going to do this? It takes like 3 days maybe to make a character for a kid who's never played the game before. So that takes a level of patience. And this is going to piggyback on the resistant student because it'll be the resistant student, or I've seen it work with an excited student goes home and says, oh, this is what we're doing. And their parents are like, well, why are you having fun in school? That's crazy. And then it takes like about a week before the holistic character creation experience gets done with the head-to-toe description of character, which is clearly a scholastic writing activity. The first thing you can say is like, this is all geared towards state standards. This is fulfilling their learning criteria in a way that nothing else really can, that it's a social activity that allows them to spend focused learning time with their peers, having fun, but learning at the same time. I also tell parents this is just once a week on Fridays as an incentive for all work being done previous to that day. So if a kid is behind on Thursday, they don't get to play. I mentioned this in other videos, but this is an accountability thing. Like, okay, so you shouldn't get to play a game if you're behind on your regular schoolwork all the time. That's that. So parents appreciate that. Also, Fridays are chronic absent days, right? Like for lots of reasons, but usually it's activities. Sometimes it's just a kid is burnt out. Sometimes they leave in for a vacation or something like that. And so Fridays end up being a great absentee day. Unfortunately, you can't make up D&D, and kids don't want to miss it, but it's not like you're going to have homework necessarily from, missing your gaming group. That has sort of helped a lot of the conversations, like, hey, we don't play D&D every day. Also, you have to keep in mind that parents don't know, if they've never played this game before, they have literally no idea what it looks like, what it means, how, they don't know that it's all played with books, using your imagination with speaking and listening. They think, people who don't know anything about this assume you take the lid off the top of the box and you pull the top hat out and you roll a d6 and you move your marker, and that's what they think of when they think of like a board game. You got to understand that. It took me a while to understand, like, what is the problem with this? Like, their kids go home super happy, their scores keep going up. I don't know why you're upset. Well, it took time. So hopefully your administrator is behind you. Otherwise, this conversation will be much more difficult. But for parents that really have a problem, like because of previous established themes in their life, the thing that I would do is have them come in and make a character. That's literally one of the best and easiest ways that you can show them, like, hey, look, this game is good for kids, completely innocent. There's literally no harm in it at all. In fact, what they'll glean from it is going to be fantastic, and you'll probably see your kid change and become more social. I've seen unpopular kids become popular kids, within the gambit of the circle of this role-playing experience in my classroom. You literally watch the relationships change. But if a parent has a real issue with this inherently, the first step I would say is, hey, like, let's meet and talk about this. Like, I can generate something else for your student to do while everyone else plays Dungeons and Dragons, but we're not going to not play Dungeons and Dragons because of your one student. That's not going to happen. So you can create an activity that everybody is happy with and explain then that your child is definitely going to be missing out on this huge opportunity. Like, if you don't want them to play, they won't play. They'll do whatever else it is that you think that you want them to do, because clearly you have a teacher's license, apparently. But yeah, so you don't want them to play, they won't play. But that kid will most definitely be missing out on a huge opportunity. So me as a teacher, I would want that parent to understand the opportunity that's going to be missed. So I've got D&D club. Hey, you want to see what we do on Fridays? Come in a D&D club after school if you can. If they can't, I'll film a little bit and say, here's what the kids are doing. I explain all the things that I would explain to an administrator. It is a fantastic learning tool for its reading comprehension, for its listening, for its social emotional growth, that's empathetic growth with their peers, and on and on and on and it goes. It gives them a focus for writing, right? Like if kids have a trouble coming up with like, well, what should I write about? They've got this character they can write about, whether it's a poem or a story or whatever. There's so many great things about it that parents would appreciate if they understood. So understanding, again, defeating ignorance becomes key. Now we've got to get to a piece of the conversation that I've been asked almost every single time I've presented anywhere in the world. Have you ever been asked about Dungeons and Dragons and the devil? This is the most ridiculous thing that still perpetuates in our society. This has been indoctrinated by churches from a really long time ago, again, out of a position of ignorance. They don't understand. They believe what they've been told, and they've hung on to this for generations now. Dungeons and Dragons has absolutely nothing to do with the occult. I will say this again. Dungeons and Dragons has absolutely nothing to do with the occult. Now, that being said, parents who don't let their children read Harry Potter because it has to do with the occult, I mean, like, yes, there's magic in it, but it is a story. If you go back to Arthurian legend, Merlin uses magic. If you're reading The Hobbit, Gandalf uses magic, okay? So if there is an inherent problem with this as a literary trope, that there's magic and fantasy and dragons and stuff, my suggestion would be to homeschool your child. And here's why. And I know that might be a punchy statement, but no, really. Like, if you don't want your kid to read Harry Potter, you probably should not have them in public school. Because if you're trying to protect them, for the sake of your value systems, and that's fine, you're a parent, I'm a parent, I get it, we have value systems, that's not mine, but okay, so that's your value system. So value system, homeschool your child, or I don't even know what else to do. Because if you have them in school and you think you're protecting them from Harry Potter, for instance, and yet they're in school with all these other children, are you aware of the types of languages and behaviors and things like that that go on in middle school when we aren't around as teachers to mitigate, who's saying what to who, when, and what the conversation is about, and then, of course, all of social media and so forth. So, like, you're trying to protect your child from a book, and yet Snapchat, Instagram, and things like that are out there. So if you want to talk about the devil, I mean, that's going to be far, far worse for students than any reading, any Harry Potter, any Dungeons and Dragons, any of that kind of stuff. But parents who have this opinion are going to be very punchy and likely upset, and that's a reality. So then I would say, hey, please, before we take your student out of this wonderful experience, would you come in and make a character so that I can show you everything? And then I can even run them through a little scenario of what role-playing looks like and how that would be with their friends. Have had similar conversations like this before, and it's really effective to just hand them a player's handbook and let them start turning the pages, and then they start to get kind of sucked in by the art and all the same stuff that the kids get sucked into. So that's really, really helpful, and hopefully you have your administrator's support. But again, like if you're afraid that you're going to ruin your value system by allowing a kid to play a game like Dungeons and Dragons, or like in the instance of like reading Harry Potter or The Hobbit or something, like you really should maybe think about the world that we live in and the world that your child is going to grow up in, and do you want them to actually be prepared for it mentally and emotionally, or would you continue to protect them from things that aren't going to hurt them? Okay, so yes, one more time. Dungeons and Dragons has absolutely nothing to do with the occult. The fact that there's like magic in it, I guess, is occult, but like these kids aren't learning how to like, I don't know, do rituals of any kind, right? Like it's a game mechanic. It's just like pushing a button on the controller. So I guess for those parents as well, the conversations, do you let your child play video games? Okay, so you do. All right, well, video games are far more detrimental than Dungeons and Dragons could ever be. Dungeons and Dragons is only beneficial to the brain. It is, like, literally only beneficial to the brain. It's only going to make you smarter. This has been proven over and over and over and over and over again for decades now, that the established concept behind, like, well, what do you think of when you think of a person who plays Dungeons and Dragons? Oh, they're a nerd. Okay, so nerds are smart, right? Yeah, nerds are smart. Okay, do you want all kids to be smart, or do you not? I mean, I just don't get it. But it comes from ignorance. Okay, so like, you have to defeat the ignorance, but you have to do so very coolly, and especially with parents, right? You want them on your side. I had a lot of resistance at first, and had to have lots of conversations. And what ended up happening was the parents started to see their kids coming home just ecstatic, like super excited. And they're like, okay, well, the kids really like this, so let's just see what happens. And I'm sure they were just waiting with their hand on the plug, ready to pull it right out of my wall, right, so that it just shut this down. Like, this isn't happening in our district. My kids need to be prepared for stuff and things, and this isn't going to do it, and I don't understand it, and, you know, this isn't in the canned curriculum that was handed to whatever. Okay, so yes, fine. But the kids came home and they were excited, and that's one step, right? They loved it. 99% of them loved it. That was good, but if scores didn't go up, it wouldn't be enough. They started seeing their scores go up. Kids got excited about learning. Their reading started to branch in all directions because of the interests that are formed from Dungeons and Dragons. All kinds of reading can spiral out of this game. All kinds. Informational, literary text, all kinds of reading happens once kids kind of get into this. So once test scores started to go up and kids are coming home happy, they're like, okay, do it. And every year there's usually something, right, that comes up. And thank God for my administrative support and both levels above me. They are now fielding these conversations for me and saying this has been well researched. Wells's class runs like a bell, you know, like it's awesome. Like, it's a part of the culture. My kids end up getting along really, really well. They look out for each other. You create this thing that's almost like a living organism out of this role-playing experience. And the Friday thing, okay, so like, I went through advisory with my students this morning, and we did the little speak stick and handed it around, and I have this poem that we read every morning called I Choose to Be Happy, which discusses the things that we go through in life. I woke up this morning, I'm tired, there's going to be a lot that I have to do, but I'm still going to choose to be happy, because you're always going to be tired, and that's just one stanza. But today we handed the stick around and talked about, like, reasons to be happy, and the kids had all kinds of really amazing things to say about how and why to be happy. And then we went around and did the stressors, like, well, what stresses you out? And found out that the same thing that makes them happy is also the thing that makes them stressed. They got cross country, they got football, they got play practice before school, they've got dance after school. These kids' days are, 10 hours long in many cases. 10 hours starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, not including the time it took them to wake up and get to school, but you're at 7 to do activities, leaving school at 5 after school activities, and then going to, like, church activities on Wednesdays or basketball stuff, for intramural sports and things like that. So these kids' lives are just completely packed with stuff. What's wrong with playing a game together on Fridays? Like, first of all, it's a learning task, okay? Like, we got to cut to the chase there. It is a learning task. They're going to have to play. They're going to have to learn how to play. That is what makes their brain powerful. They can't just, like, chill, but it is a much more relaxing activity than, writing a paper or, like, reading a novel would be far more relaxing than playing D&D, but not as fun, right? So this was done by design to basically reward them for a week of hard work. And my students work very hard. And I know these videos are about using D&D in your classroom, but, like, of course we don't play D&D every day in school here. Like, it's one day a week. Now this week, my wife and I are actually going to a Pearl Jam concert in Denver. So for the first time, I'm, like, going to be gone on a Friday. It doesn't hardly ever happen that I'm ever gone at all because I don't like missing school. But I'm going to be gone on Friday, so we're not playing this week. And they're like, why? And immediately one of my sweet little girls was like, "Oh, Mr. Wells, what if we played twice next week?" And I'm like, "Yep, that's probably going to happen Thursday, Friday." And here's what's beneficial about that. It has nothing to do with parents. But we missed this week, and they're still just kind of learning how to play. So if we play on Thursday and we play on Friday, the rollover in their brain of the game system and what their characters were doing and the storyline they're playing will be reinforced from one day to the next instead of having to wait a whole week like all of us have to do in our D&D groups almost always. But if they're succinct, right, Thursday, Friday, there's going to be an understanding that really clicks. And so I'm totally willing to do that next week because I told them we're going to play D&D once a week. Even if it's a short week, we'll play, if we have Friday off, we'll play on Thursday, etc. So this week we weren't able to play. They're working really hard. I got one class writing literary analysis paper for The Most Dangerous Game, my favorite short story ever. And my other kids are actually getting to watch The Desolation of Smaug because we're at that ending point in The Hobbit. And so a nice relaxing day for them, but we didn't get to play D&D, and they were very much aware of it and willing to call me out on, like, hey, you said we were going to get to play every week. What the? Okay, well, we'll do it next week. Talking to parents, you got to be as cool as you can. Show them the book. Show them the book. Show them how innocent it is. I don't know what they think, especially the folks that think it's satanic. You guys, it's the 21st century, y'all. Okay, really. It is the 21st. I think it's the 21st. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the 21st century. You guys, wake up. Okay, really. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that your value system has allowed this to be a thing in the first place. If it were me in that value system, I'd be like, social media is going to ruin your children. And I mean, maybe that's the conversation is there as well. But you can't protect them from everything is the first reality. And the second reality is knowing what you're actually protecting them from. So if you are just approaching everything out of a position of ignorance because you're scared all the time, you got to think about going through your life with this fear. Why are you letting fear drive your life? Okay, so don't let that happen. Inform yourself. If you're afraid that your children are being subjected to something that you disagree with, how do you know you disagree with it if you don't try? Okay, so you have to take the reins and you give your teachers the benefit of the doubt, because if they're like me, they're doing this because they realize that beyond anything that I could provide for these kids, this is going to be one of the most impactful learning experiences of their life. Okay, so before you pull the plug on your student being able to play this game in school with their peers, please, parents, please contact the teacher. Say, hey, I have lots of questions about this. I'd love to meet with you. Can we do that? And as a teacher, your job is to say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, come on in, whatever day. I got club after school on Wednesday if you just want to see kids playing it. And family, D&D teacher nerd family, once you get that vision in their minds of these kids playing and smiling and laughing and rolling dice and moving little minis and looking at these books and stuff, they're going to have this realization that everything that they've been told about this is wrong, and that it is good for kids, and that the reading is difficult and challenging, and you need to internalize it and synthesize it and use it and deal with your peers and solve problems amongst people and all kinds of really fantastic skills that you just can't get any other way in school. So have them see it. Be really cool about it and say, I understand. I understand that you have lots of questions. I would love to answer any and all of them for you. So I don't really know how helpful this was, but I'm dedicated to, just trying to help wherever it's helpful. So communicating with parents is really important. An email at the beginning of the year sometimes can be good, but I've sent emails at the beginning of the year and it caused nothing but problems. So this year I didn't send an email to parents saying this is what we do and this is how it works and stuff. I just, whatever. Because the last time I did that, it was bombarded with questions instead. And so I just decided I'd cover them as they came and use these videos to just send them a link and say, okay, just look at this. But the research is clear. It makes kids bright. The social experiment of it all has worked splendidly, and my classroom culture is literally amazing. I come to school every day and love my job, not because I get to play D&D, on Fridays, but because the way that culture was built because of that, every day is sort of like playing a game together, even though we're doing, regular learning activities. And so the parents need to understand that the kids are working really hard on what they would consider to be regular scholastic activities, and that although Fridays is a game day, the game actually takes more metacognition than everything that I've asked them to do during the entire week. And I know this, and I find that hilarious. And so these are the things that you have to tell parents, and you have to be really cool about it. But I would start by saying, if you really don't want your kid to play, we can find them something else to do. But this not being a thing for the rest of the students because your student can't play is not going to be a thing. This is public education, and this is their classroom design. By Fridays, they get to play. And if your student doesn't want to, we can find them something else to do. It's not going to be a punishment, right? But it's not going to be fun like Dungeons and Dragons is, and your student is going to know that. And that's going to be on you. So before that happens, let's open the book so that let's make you a character. Let's make you a character. And I would bet 9 times out of 10, if they are willing to subscribe to doing that task, they're going to see that they were wrong about it all the time. Then what you have is an ally. And that ally connected to other parents are going to be like, yep, I know you think it's weird. Mr. Wells, show me how to make a character. This game is awesome. Or it's super innocent. Or, I'm glad that they don't have to worry about taking homework home on a Friday or whatever it is. So you just got to tell them what you know, be passionate about it, and tell them why you're doing this, like why I'm playing D&D in schools, because I've been playing my whole life and I realize that it makes people literally brilliant, and people who have emotional damage, it can really help them, and on and on and on and on and on and on it goes. How beneficial this game has been to everyone who's learned how to play it throughout the course of their entire life. So if you want to deny, now since 74, 84, 94, 2004, 2000, almost 4 decades of research of this stuff, which is completely findable anecdotally and driven by numbers, that this game has been beneficial to not only people, but our society. Dungeons and Dragons built, designed every game. Like the system, the core mechanic is the system by which all other games operate. Okay, so like every other game that the kids play today came from this game. So when they play this game, they understand games at large, and they're become to understand like how all games work. Well, the games are a system, and if they can understand the system of a game, they can understand a system of life. If they're used to taking from the system of Dungeons and Dragons to activate a character, that means they can look at any other system, take the information that they need, and activate it as a person. Okay, so like this stuff isn't rocket science. This is really basic human psychology. But if you just turn off when a parent does this, or if your administrators don't support you and they have these well, parents said stuff and things. Well, then you have to have the administrator conversation. You should have probably had it, first. But if you're begging for forgiveness instead of asking for permission, which I totally understand, then you're going to have this conversation with both of them. If you can get your administrator on your side and the parent's still hot, have the parent come in with your administrator, and that way they can, see that you're really trying to inform this parent. It's not awesome, right? Like nobody wants to deal with this, but if you deal it with a really positive attitude and show them that there is a clear reason you're doing this and it has nothing to do with a day off, because it's not for you or them or anybody in the room. So I think creating a path of enlightenment and getting the, sweep the ignorance in the dustpan and get rid of it. But that's on you, teachers, to do that. You have to inform these parents that are resistant, and you really should have administrative support, because if you don't, they're probably just going to pull the plug on you. Next video is going to be resistant students, which goes right along with the resistant parents. So if you got, Susie Q, who hates you and hates your game and hates everything about your class because it's, I don't know, so fun or something, it happens. It does happen. Promise that happens. Well, then that student goes home to their parents and they're like, I don't understand why we have to learn how to play this stupid game. It's not even in school stuff and things. Well, it is. So then you're to see how that chain works, right? Student to parent to administrator. So I did it in reverse order. Talking with administrators is your first step. It is. And then if you have a resistant parent because a student came home and said, I hate this, or even if they came home and said, I love this more than anything, guys, it's weird how that freaks parents out sometimes. Well, what are they doing in that class? If it's so much fun, are they actually doing any real learning? Dude, my kids are brilliant. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. So yes, next video is going to be talking about resistant students and how to deal with them. Keeping in mind, of course, that you're a teacher and you have students, and so it doesn't matter what you're doing, you're going to have resistant students. But it seems like when it's like a workbook or something that's like expected, right? Like, oh, we know we have to do this, and Timmy's not doing it. You can be like, you have to do this, Timmy. And Timmy's like, oh, I know. Well, why is it any different for Dungeons and Dragons? As your teacher, I've set this up. You have to play. You actually have to play and know how to play and care about playing and so forth. So that gets under some students' skins because it's not normal. And this is going on into another video. I'm going to do it probably next week. So this is communicating with parents about playing Dungeons and Dragons in school. It is something that you will have to do. It's domain 4 of the Danielson framework is communicating with parents. And a 4 in that category would be like students communicating with parents for you first and saying, here's why Mr. Wells says we get to play this game, and I can already see in myself that I'm improving in certain things. That would be a 4, but obviously, like, you got to talk to them as well. If you got any questions, put them in the comments. I guess that's what that thing is for. Otherwise, Wizard Wells running out of time. Peace.